The garden was alive with color roses, tulips, sunlight spilling across trimmed hedges. But what stopped the millionaire cold wasn't the flowers. It was the sight of his twin children, laughing silently, their little hands flying in the air matching. The gentle signs of a young maid kneeling in front of them. For the first time, he saw joy in their faces that he had never been able to bring. And it wasn't him, it was her. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from. And don't forget to hit subscribe for more videos like this. Let's begin. Daniel Hayes, 37, stepped through the garden gate, leather shoes crunching against the stone path. He wasn't a man easily startled. Millions moved at the flick of his pen, but what he saw rooted him. His 6-year-old twins, Chloe and Liam, had been quiet since birth, their silence heavier than any boardroom failure. Teachers gave up, therapists collected checks. Daniel poured money into experts, yet his kids remained locked in their own world. But now, their faces glowed. Chloe's eyes sparkled as she shaped words with her hands. Liam's shoulders shook. With a giggle Daniel had never heard, but could feel. And kneeling between them, barefoot in the grass, apron dusty from chores, was Sophie Miller, 24, the maid he'd barely noticed. Her hands moved fluidly, tender but confident, shaping symbols in the air. "What is this?" Daniel's voice was sharper than intended. The twins froze. Sophie turned, guilt flashing in her eyes like she'd been caught stealing. I was just showing them some sign language," she whispered. "I learned it. My younger brother is deaf. They picked it up so fast, Mr. Hayes. Daniel's chest tightened. "No one told you to." "No one had to," Sophie said softly, her voice trembling yet steady. "They wanted to talk, Mr. Hayes. They've been waiting for someone to listen." The words cracked something in him. For years, silence had been his enemy. Silence at the breakfast table. Silence on birthdays. He threw money at the problem, but never this. Never human kindness. Chloe tugged his sleeve, little hands signing clumsily. "Daddy, happy dot." It was the first time his daughter had ever said anything close to that. Daniel's breath caught. His empire, his wealth suddenly meaningless, and for the first time, the millionaire realized he wasn't in control. Daniel didn't dismiss her. He surprised himself by saying, "Study." 5 minutes, then led the way across sun-warmed stone. The twins scampered behind, fingers still dancing in little bursts of language that made his throat go tight. In the paneled study, sunlight slanted over framed deal trophies and a chessboard no one touched. Daniel folded his arms, controlling what he could. "You taught them. How long?" Sophie stood straight, apron dusted with grass. 3 weeks. After chores. 15 minutes at a time. They asked for more. She looked toward the door, where Chloe peered in, eyes hopeful. "They were hungry for it." Daniel nodded once. "Compensation isn't an issue," he said carefully. Money, his favorite tool, felt crude in this room. "But if we do this, it's done right. Structure. Boundaries. I'll bring in a therapist to evaluate. You'll coordinate with her." Sophie's shoulders didn't slump at the control. "That's good," she said softly. "But can I ask for something too?" He blinked. She continued. "Lower shelves so they can see your face when you talk. Lights that dim instead of buzz. Labels with signs at eye level. It's not just language, it's a house that listens. A house that listens." He'd built walls that impressed investors. "Not children. Do it," he said. By afternoon, Daniel had Evelyn Brooks, speech-language pathologist, forthright, early 40s, on the grounds, hair in a neat bun and a leather satchel hugged close. She had worked with the twins last year. Before resigning politely, "They won't meet goals without buy-in at home." Her notes still stung. They met on the back terrace. The twins perched on wicker chairs, legs swinging. Sophie knelt between them on the flagstones, like it was the most natural place in the world. "Show me." Dr. Brooks said. Sophie began simple. Hello, open hand near temple, small wave. Chloe copied it, chin tilted with concentration. Liam followed, adding a grin so wide it broke Daniel's heart. Sophie layered more. Happy, flat hands brush upward on chest. Name, 2 fingers tap twice. Daddy, open hand, thumb taps forehead. The twins' hands mirrored hers, then darted on their own. Liam signed back something clumsy, eager. Sophie smiled. He said, "Daddy happy?" Daniel's answer came. "Out rough, I am." Dr. Brooks didn't hide her reaction. Her eyes sharpened. Her shoulders dropped half an inch like relief. "This is progress, Daniel," she said. "Real, self-motivated progress. Whoever you hired, I didn't," he said. She hired herself. Sophie blushed. Dr. Brooks knelt beside her. "You've built trust," she said, impressed. "Keep modeling. Keep the sessions short and joyful. I'll draft a plan, and you," she looked at Daniel, "you will learn too." Something in him, old and stiff, bristled at being assigned homework in his own home. Then Chloe tapped his wrist and signed, careful and slow, "Learn with me?" "Absolutely," he said. No negotiation left in him. They practiced until dusk turned. The garden lavender. Sophie's kindness showed up in 100 quiet ways, bringing soft mats so the twins could lie back and sign overhead. Pulling muffins from the kitchen and breaking them into halves so the kids could sign and chew without rushing. Teaching Daniel to wait through their pauses instead of finishing their thoughts. When Liam got frustrated, Sophie didn't rush to correct. She tapped her own chest and signed feel, then breathe, exaggerating a slow inhale. Liam copied, calming as if he'd been handed a steering wheel inside his own chest. Later, inside, Daniel's phone buzzed nonstop. Ethan Rowe, his PR chief, had seen a staffer's careless post. A blurred photo of Sophie in the garden surrounded by flowers, hands mid-air. The caption meant to be sweet read. "Our maid is a miracle worker with the boss's kids." "Pull it," Daniel said. "It's already screenshotted," Ethan replied, voice tight. "Gossip pages are circling. If the narrative becomes, 'Millionaire neglects kids, Maid steps in,' it'll gnaw at your custody arrangement." The house seemed suddenly too bright. Custody. Natalie. She arrived the next morning in a crisp blazer and opinions sharpened like knives. Natalie Pierce, 35, brilliant, accustomed to rooms that bowed when she entered, strode into the breakfast nook where Sophie poured orange juice like nothing in the world was on fire. "Good morning," Natalie said, scanning the room. Until her gaze landed on Sophie. "You must be the maid." Sophie set the pitcher down. "Yes, Miss Pierce, I'm Sophie." "The kids are excited too." "I'm sure they are," Natalie said coolly. Given the new hobby, Daniel felt the shoo. Twins tense. He stepped in. "It's not a hobby. It's a language, and they're learning." Natalie didn't address him. She crouched in front of Chloe and Liam, speaking loud and slow, old habit of people who think volume cures deafness. "Mommy is here. Mommy wants you to come with her this weekend. No busyness with helpers." Chloe glanced past Natalie to Sophie, whose face was calm and open. Sophie signed your choice. Then she looked to Daniel and with a tiny shake of her head that was more plea than order, didn't speak for them. Liam lifted his hands and signed, shaky but clear, "Weekend, yes mom, Sophie come." Natalie blinked, unfamiliar. "With the shapes, what did he say?" Daniel translated. "He wants Sophie there." "No," Natalie snapped, "absolutely not. These are professionals' jobs, not a maid's experiment. If you won't protect our kids from chaos, I will talk to the court." Sophie's cheeks flushed. "Miss Pierce," she said gently, "I understand your fear. I'm not trying to replace anyone. I'm standing in a gap. If it helps, I can step back when—" "Stop," Daniel said, surprising them both. He looked at Natalie. "You left because this house was a museum. No sound, no mess, no risk. I made that. I did that. But last night my son asked me if I was happy, in his language. That doesn't go backward because of optics. Natalie's mouth tightened. Under the ice, Daniel recognized hurt, the kind that made people throw up walls and call them standards. Then get a certified interpreter, she said. Get 3. But do not let a maid make them dependent on crumbs of kindness. Sophie didn't defend herself. She reached into her apron and pulled out 2 laminated cards. On one, a simple stick figure signed "Thank you." On the other, "Safe. I was going to tape these under the kitchen shelves," she said quietly, "for them to touch when they need the words." Chloe touched "Safe" with 2 small fingers and looked up at her father. Daniel was done pretending he didn't know what mattered. "Ethan," he said into his phone minutes later in the hallway, "craft a statement. We're not hiding. Say, our family is learning ASL. We're proud of anyone who helps us get there. If there's blowback, it lands on me." "And the staff leak?" Ethan asked. "Find who posted." "Don't fire them," Daniel said. "Give them media training. Fear doesn't make a better house." Asterisk in the afternoon. The CFO called, voice equal parts caution and power. "Cliff Bennett here. The board thinks the optics are untidy. Might I suggest placing the maid on leave and engaging a boutique agency for the children?" Asterisk Daniel stared out at the garden where Sophie labeled stones with little drawings and signs the twins could trace with chalk. He'd built an empire by removing variables. Yet what his children needed was messy and human. "We'll engage specialists," he said. "And the maid stays. She's not decoration. She's the reason we're here." "Of course," Cliff said, tone making it clear this was far from over. That night a storm shouldered over the hills and knocked out the power for an hour. Emergency lights hummed. Liam woke crying no sound, just the kind of tremor that told of nightmares you couldn't name. Daniel rushed to the doorway and froze when he saw it. Sophie was already on the floor beside the small bed, hands moving slow and sure by flashlight. "Monster," she signed, eyebrows up. Liam nodded. She signed "Gone," and then S as if he, pressing the card into his palm like a promise he could hold. She counted with him, 1 to 10, breathing with exaggerated calm. The quake in him eased. He tucked the card under his cheek like a talisman and drifted back to sleep. Daniel backed into the hall and put his forehead against the wall. He had failed so grandly by thinking money could buy what only steady presence gives. In the morning, the gossip page finally popped. A grainy photo, a snarky line. "Household help becomes household hero." "Inside the Hayes estate," Ethan texted. "We can write it. But the board is twitchy. Cliff is calling a quiet review of staff roles. At noon, Daniel found Sophie in the laundry room, sleeves rolled to the elbow, folding neatly like discipline could keep her from shaking. "Mr. Hayes," she said without turning, "if my being here costs you custody, I'll leave. I can't be the reason they lose time with you. I wrote out the signs we've been practicing. There's a binder on the counter. It'll hold them until someone better steps in." He stared at the binder tabs color-coded, drawings clear as daylight, notes in a careful hand. If Liam turns away mid-sign, he's not ignoring you. He's breathing. Let him come back on his own. Another tab. Chloe likes stories and signs. Tell her kitchen fairy tales. She translate them for you. "You think someone better is coming?" Daniel asked quietly. Sophie swallowed. "They deserve more than a maid with a good heart. They deserve you," he said. "And they deserve me learning from you." Before she could answer, little footsteps thudded down the hall. Chloe and Liam burst in, hair static from play, faces worried. Chloe clutched the safeguard. Liam dragged the binder, flipping to the first page where Sophie had sketched family, thumbs, and index fingers make a circle. He signed it wrong, messy, earnest, and then jabbed a finger at Sophie, then at Daniel, then looped his hands again. "Family, stay." Sophie's breath hitched. Daniel felt the room tilt toward the only decision that made sense, one that would Make enemies in polite rooms and friends where it mattered. Okay, he said, voice steadying. We stay. A shadow moved in the doorway. Cliff Bennett stood there, tie perfect, expression not. Mr. Hayes, he said, eyes flicking from Sophie to the children to the binder. The board is in the conference room. They're waiting. We need to discuss liabilities. Daniel looked at his kids, at the card in Chloe's hand and the binder on the table. He looked at Sophie, whose kindness had already rewired the house. Good, Daniel said, straightening. Because I have a proposal. He took the binder with him. The conference room smelled of polished oak and espresso places built for control. 12 board members sat in a crescent, their suits crisp, eyes sharp. Cliff Bennett, CFO, adjusted his tie with the calm of a man who thought he'd already won. Daniel, he began smoothly, the household incident is unfortunate. The leak makes you look careless. Investors fear a distraction. Our solution: place the maid on leave, issue a sanitized statement, hire professionals, it's cleaner. Daniel set the binder Sophie had made on the glossy table. Its color-coded tabs looked absurd in a room like this, yet he opened it anyway. Cleaner? His voice cut through. Look at this. Notes about my children's breathing patterns. Signs drawn so even a tired father can learn. Reminders to tell bedtime stories in their language. That's not cleaner, that's family. A few members exchanged glances. Cliff smirked. With respect, shareholders don't pay for family. Daniel leaned forward. Shareholders pay for vision. Vision dies if leaders can't keep their own houses alive. For years I failed. My children lived in silence. This, he tapped the binder, is the first sound of progress. You call her a liability. I call her the reason I'll show up. To this company whole instead of hollow. The silence was heavier than any balance sheet. Finally, Evelyn Brooks, the speech therapist invited to observe, spoke. If you want numbers, she said firmly, consider this. Children supported. Early in their own language thrive. That means fewer interventions, stronger resilience. Long-term cost? Down. Long-term potential? Limitless. She looked at Daniel. The maid gave them a future no money had managed to buy. The word maid lingered like an insult. Daniel corrected. It with steel in his voice. Her name is Sophie Miller. Remember it. Natalie, sitting at the far end as the twins' mother, crossed her arms but didn't interrupt. Daniel noticed her jaw tighten, not denial, but something breaking through pride. Cliff tried again. Investors want assurance. Keep her in the shadows, fine, but elevating her? Risky. Daniel snapped the binder shut. Here's my assurance. If you push her out, you push me out. And without me, this company loses not just leadership, but the contracts only I can hold. He stood, authority radiating. Decide what's worth more, appearances or survival. The board shifted uneasily. They knew his record. They knew his reach. No one spoke against him. Hours later, the mansion was quiet again. Sophie stood at the kitchen sink, rinsing chalk off her fingers. She didn't hear him enter, only felt his presence in the doorway. You carried us today, Daniel, said Dot. She shook her head. You carried yourself. I just filled in the cracks. He stepped closer. You don't understand. For years I built walls so high even my kids couldn't climb them. And then you, without permission, without pay, taught them to scale them. That's not cracks. That's a rescue. Her eyes softened, tears threatening. I didn't want to overstep. I only wanted them to know they weren't broken. They aren't, Daniel said firmly. And neither am I because of you. At that moment, Liam and Chloe barreled in, clutching sheets of paper scrawled with stick figures signing family and safe. They pressed them to Sophie's apron, then turned to their father and signed thank you with tiny deliberate hands. Daniel's voice broke. No thank you. The weeks ahead weren't easy. Headlines swirled. Millionaire defies board for Maid. But the tide shifted when a video surfaced. Leaked again, this time deliberately by Ethan. Chloe signing a clumsy story about a princess who found her voice. Sophie kneeling beside her, laughing. Daniel listening with tears in his eyes. The world didn't mock it, melted. Parents wrote in. Investors who once grumbled praised the human brand story. Schools asked if the Hayes Foundation would sponsor ASL programs. For the first time, Daniel's empire wasn't just profitable, it was meaningful. Natalie visited again, less sharp this time. Watching Chloe sign a bedtime prayer, she whispered to Daniel, "I fought you. I was wrong. They need this. They need her." Daniel only nodded. "Then let's not fight anymore. Let's give them both parents who show up." She agreed, surprising them both. One late evening, Daniel found Sophie in the garden, barefoot, teaching the twins to sign the names of flowers by moonlight. Her kindness hadn't dimmed under pressure. It had only grown. "You could leave," he said quietly. "Walk into a dozen offers from schools, hospitals, agencies." Sophie smiled, but they wouldn't be Chloe and Liam. He studied her, realizing the truth. Kindness wasn't her job. It was her nature. And it had rewired not just the children, but him. Daniel Hayes, the man who once thought silence was permanent, had learned a new language. One built not of profit, but of presence. And in that moonlit garden, with laughter silent, but shining, he finally felt what the twins had signed weeks before. Daddy happy,